You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant. And today, I've got an old friend, Mike Black, from Profitero, and we're going to jump into kind of this convergence of media and content that's out there and what's happening within organizations, kind of the push and the pull and where it's going as a whole. A lot of reference, I think might be going back to Lauren that we did the Digital Shelf Institute. There's a lot of questions around this space and a lot of conversation. So with that, Mike, I'll kick it over to you. You guys have been great friends, partners, supporters of the network for a long time now. We've been friends. I don't know if we've known each other for, 7-8 years. I can't remember what it is. Yeah, a long time in the digital world. But you want to jump in, brief intro yourself, Profitero and all that fun stuff? That'd be awesome. And we'll jump into the conversation.
Yeah, so I'm Mike Black, Chief Marketing Officer at Profitero. Profitero is an e-commerce analytics platform. We've been basically a leader in the space when it comes to digital shelf analytics, market share estimation for Amazon. And we also have a lot of technologies now that are helping to connect the dots between commerce data and media. We're part of Publicis, so we have a great synergy between the media buying that's happening in the world and commerce and content. Which is a real passion area for me, is how those things come together and how those things are converging as brands mature and those teams start to converge.
Yeah. Awesome. So as we jump into it, we can take the conversation anywhere you want to go, but you'd mentioned teams. And this is something that we were just hashing out was, this massive need for content, and it's being consumed faster than it's ever been consumed. And how basically companies, institutions are struggling with the content piece. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on how, are you seeing the same thing? It costs more than ever to produce. More of it than ever.
Yeah. So really at the, at the high level I see is, there's sort of a heavy focus, and rightly so, on retail media. Right? It's a huge area of investment and spend. And it's getting the kind of attention that e-commerce got 3 years ago when we saw everything from the pandemic. And I think brands are looking at that as an area that they need to manage, and obviously putting a lot of tech and resources behind it. But one of the things we've learned at Profitero is that it's very hard to separate your traffic driving activities from the conversion driving engines. And that includes when you think about it, at the end of the day, it's like the relationship of, ads to TV creative. Right? You can buy awesome spots on TV, but if your ad creative's not great, what are you going to get out of it? So the same really applies to commerce content. And by that, I mean typically the PDP and what's on that PDP that is going to convince a shopper to convert and buy. So one of the things that I think is that it's almost like having, working on two muscles at the same time, is while you are investing more in retail media, you also have to pay attention to your content and make sure that it's converting. But I think brands are a little behind the curve there in some ways, because one of the things we have learned, and we just did a study with Lauren, Lauren Livek from PSI, is that brands are still in the compliance stage of content management, right? They're still just looking at, is this correct? They're checking the box and make sure they have it. And that is a lot of work, to stand up that content and scale. They haven't yet really invested as much in the optimization. Is this resonating? Is this converting? Is this getting us the most organic juice so that we can maximize that? And I think that's going to shift. I think we're going to see brands start to shift and invest more in that. But as you said, traditionally, very costly, very difficult. And one of the things that we learned as we were talking to brands is brands are often they have these brand teams that are creating content, giving that content to the commerce teams. Then the commerce team's like, I can't use this. This is not shopper ready. And they're having to reinvent all that content. So I think what we're seeing is an opportunity for brands to invest more in analytics, AI, get that content right from the get-go, keep it optimized. But I think we're in the early stages of that. But I think we're starting to see a shift towards that kind of data-driven built content.
Yeah, I'm thinking like there's two sides to it, right? There's the maturation point of, these content teams as a whole, and they've been asked to pivot, right? Like go from here to everything you're producing to 90%, not 180, but just think of it completely different, where you have that digital ready content as well, while you're producing all the standard brand content and adhering to the brand guidelines that you have in place. And if you're in the FDA or, some kind of regulatory space, that it's getting reviewed and approved. So there's that standpoint of the maturation part and of basically those orgs as a whole, but also the tech part. Like you were saying, like AI is going to have to get to a point, right? There's going to have to be tools out there that enable them, because you can't create enough content on your own to satisfy the need from the digital team side. And we've seen, a lot of tech come out in the ad space, right? Retail media ad tech has blown up. How you manage, you look at digital shelf, right? And we had the team at Visit on. So there's all these tools that have popped up. We just need some more that come up and they address the content generation side.
Yeah. And I think that, the challenge is, I see the framework around content optimization or content effectiveness, like generally is to operationalize it, is really two things. One is you have to get it right the first time. And what I mean by right is you have to be giving your brand creative teams the guidance of what the principles of winning in the algorithm are for a given retailer, how you merchandise in that category visually, so that that brief is more informed when they're creating it, and they get that right, and you have great content. But what happens is it's not set it and forget it. Keywords are changing dynamically. Competitors are changing. So the context in which your consumers are seeing your content is changing. So the second pillar is you then have to keep it optimized. And I think that's where the opportunity is technologies that are informing that upstream process, and then dynamically sort of giving you recommendations, giving you actions, optimizations based on the changing of the keywords. For example, we're working, we have a technology that's tracking, what are the most popular search keywords in a given retailer, how that's changing over time. We're able to look at what the factors of the algorithm are, that whether it's title length, how, your image resolution, we even have readability of your copy. And what we can then do with that is, as a creative content team, you can then look to see how the content in the wild is actually performing, and then optimize that with AI tools. So I see it as it's really almost the harder part to scale is once you get it out the door, it almost instantly becomes irrelevant in the context of the competitors, and those tools can help you scale that optimization. And also, we find that most brands have to make a choice. They have to choose, well, we can only do these for these hero products, but I think the power of the technology is to scale that to your tier 2, your tier 3, and get that long tail going. And I think that's where that's the other power where this technology can go. So you can have more optimized content, not just have to pick and choose a few things because you don't have the resources. And that's where the tech and AI could really take the space.
Yeah, I think we're only maybe a year away. And I think it's twofold in the space. You're the people out there that are trying to solve for it completely. You also have, if you think about it, you get to a point where you upload your brand guidelines, you upload the product specs and the product into an AI engine, and it is creating content and evolving the content almost in real time. Like you're saying, new competitors come onto a marketplace, they're bidding on different keywords. You want to conquest them, whatever it might be. It could automatically update, right, everything that's on it to stay on top and stay fresh. But we're also at the same time going to allow it to generate ad content and change their bids and optimize A/B test, A, B, C, D, E, F, G test and then alter it by demographics, regionality, where you're actually serving up almost personalized ads. I mean, that's not too far away. And if you would have said that 2 years ago, everybody would think, yeah, well, that's, a decade away. But one of the things the pandemic did is it threw all this money into tech. And now as the PEVC money is slowing down, that we see if you weren't post Series A and profitable, you're not getting the next round of money. And all that money then is still out there to be invested. It's pouring into some key players that have really shown some success. And then I think they're rapidly changing it. We're accelerating all the good players that are out there. It's crazy.
And I think the interesting too is building that point. It's like, retailers are kind of an interesting spot, right? And look at what Amazon's doing. I mean, Amazon has AI optimization now. They have A/B testing. I'd actually be curious to get your thoughts on how brands use some of those tools, but they sit on all this data. The retailers have the ability to personalize on all this data in real time. And it'll be kind of interesting at what point those retailers sort of say, hey, let me take this. Can I take this? How do they sort of experiment? And we know Amazon is the genius of experimentation. Will brands give them some leeway to start doing these things? Because in real time, they can look at conversion. They can look at this lift. So it is interesting how far that is, and where I think it's interesting where those technologies wind up. Does that tech stack live in the brand side? Does it be part of a toolkit that Amazon has and other retailers? But I'd be curious to get your take, because I'm always wondering, Amazon has A/B testing tools. How do you see brands leveraging and testing content? Are they using A/B testing? And what do you see in terms of even the adoption of some of these, image analytics tools? Or how do you see brands using those?
So if we'll break it out, the on Amazon, if it's outside of the brand's own tech stack, very trepidatious as a whole. I came from the pharma side. Don't touch my ad. Don't touch any of my copy. Don't touch it. I'm going to get in trouble if you do. And so then anybody in the CPG space, if you have a well-known brand, you have a great brand name, you don't want them to touch it. But it's then interesting, right? Because what does that provide? That tech is amazing, and it is going to drive conversion. And you're going to see these smaller brands, right? Amazon's a brand launch growth platform. If you can get a fantastic product and you're just getting started, you can start pulling all those levers. You don't have that much to lose, right? If it's a little off center, nobody knows you enough anyways. But then you can actually, gain momentum. If you think way back in the AMS days, right? How many little brands grew because large companies were completely messing up either their content, how much they were spending, not spending enough. And you have these little brands that would pour into content, pour into the right, media spend in the right search terms, and, over-index on their spend, and they got, disproportionate gains out of it. So I see these smaller mid-sized brands without as much brand awareness using it as a launch pad to become well-known brands. If you're the household name, few people are going to trust that. Brand teams just don't want to do it. And all you need to have it do, right, is pull in some random crazy term that doesn't apply, and your whole customer base goes berserk. So that's kind of where I see all of that tech play out. But then it proves itself, and then everybody, the larger companies are the fast followers. They go buy those brands that grew and use them, and so that's where I see it. Now, the other stuff, if you can own it, like a Visit. If you can own it, then that's completely different, because you have then the check before it goes live. All of those big companies want the check before it goes live.
Yeah.
And that's I'd say for the adoption of kind of the tech, we're just talking about, where it's going to create the content, but also the paid media content and adjust the bids. There's going to have to be somebody, as a gatekeeper for the first year before everybody feels comfortable with it. And after that, I mean, if it goes wrong every now and again, people are to say, hey, the AI did it, right? It's almost like the CYA. Oh, so sorry, AI did this. Everybody uses AI. We did too. Yeah, sorry. I think I don't think you can say that now, but like a year from now, you can start saying that.
Yeah, you make a great point. This about how the adoption of these tools come out, and usually like with any tech, there's this like, it has to hit like an enterprise sort of readiness and threshold. But what you're talking about is like basically it's the democratization of tech for these sellers, these small brands, right? Like allowing them to compete in a world where they don't have those resources. And that's, something that like Amazon's tool set and the tool set that is built around Amazon has done a really good job. And they're scrappy and they're using all these different tools to create an advantage. So I totally agree. Like once a enterprise brand sees that agility and sees how that is a competitive advantage and sees the conversion and the benefits of that, then they're going to pay a little bit more attention and really going to have to put the right structures around that. I think the brands, who are thinking about it the right way right now is they're not just, everybody's playing with AI tools, but I think there are a few brands that are thinking about the structure of putting that in the business already. So they're already thinking about, all right, legally, how are we going to deal with this? They're going through that. Where is it going to sit? Like putting the right controls and processes. You have to almost do that at the same time of playing around. So I think there's like two types of enterprise brands, ones that are playing around and kind of waiting. But there are some that are seriously like, we're going after this and we're already going to validate, test, put this through IT, put this through legal, and they're just fast tracking the approval and the safeguard infrastructure around that. And that's the unglorious part of this, but that's what makes it work in a big CPG brand. So I see a few brands like racing towards that now.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm an advocate. If you're over $1 billion, if you, I don't know, maybe it's even 500 million now, but to have like a chief like AI officer, I just see the need for it right now because, like you're saying, like it's coming fast, and people aren't prepping for it. Like you're saying, there's a bunch of them that are just dabbling in it. You can't dabble in it. You're just going to be completely left behind. And that's across it's not just on brands, it's across multiple industries. I think it's going to really affect agencies. Because like you're talking about the democratization of tech, like when you're just a small startup agency and some of this tech is available and you can just dump in content and brand guidelines and hit go and it just does everything for you. I mean, that's interesting, right? So
yeah,
like how do you handle that? Then once that's been democratized, how do you show that you're better than the next guy? And,
well, it's interesting too. And while we, while we are, content, I mean, there's a maturity curve and there's all stages of things, and there's certainly the optimization. But like even now, when you talk to a lot of brands, just even some of the fundamentals still aren't there. To be honest with you, right? People, typically, they stand up, they're down, then they start getting that out there. But what we find is, particularly on Amazon, is there's just such a dynamic set of factors that put that content out of compliance, whether it's you lost a buy box, 3P changes your content, variants can unbreak, things like that happen. So, the other part of technology is really, I think, the automation around fixing these things, right? Like making sure that you're syndicating it, and you use tools like Profitero to measure your compliance, but there's also this tech stack that allows you to sort of monitor that and fix that. And that's something that we've actually introduced, is that full loop measurement of being able to sort of connect with your Salsify and automatically, fix things on Amazon for you so that you can get that time back, because teams spent so much time just fixing that in that dynamic environment. And I think we're going to see in any 3P marketplace, or even Walmart in some ways, that element is just going to create even more day-to-day breakages of content that you're just going to have to monitor. And unless you put the automation in that side, it's really hard to free up the mental capacity to do anything else.
No, I love the full loop piece, especially from the brand side, because when it's like you're checking a dashboard and it's just like something's wrong. I remember, if I throw way back to my old, with Clavis, right? Way back in the day, where it would just like email me every time something went wrong. I mean, we've got hundreds of SKUs, not 1,500 SKUs on the platform. It's just like, like, so something's wrong. I need it to be fixed. Like, I don't even have time to go fix it because I don't even know what I need to do. So that's pretty sweet. So they can plug in. It reads as something's wrong. Okay, we're gonna go update it, and then that's everybody take note of that.
Yeah, that frees you. But I think it's kind of interesting, just like I think the other piece, which is it gets back to this. I think it's the convergence of media, and we said content, but I also think you could say commerce, right? In general, is that then you have this sort of like measurement, like how should we really be looking at the convergence on this? And one thing you see is retail media metrics are focused on one set, but like paid media, share voice. I think organic search is a big point of that, right? And so why do you optimize your content when you get conversion? You want to get the organic. I don't think the teams there are really often do we see sort of brands looking at those two things together. You have your retail media team optimizing certain things, and you got your shelf team optimizing here. And sometimes because that divide, you may be over investing, like, wow, we're already winning this organically a lot. Should we be going after this? Or, hey, this word is really hard to win organically. Should we go after and pay for it? I don't know if you see this, but I don't see consistently that there's this sort of, that there's still a lot of silos between the teams that are measuring success. It's all search at the end of the day. Some of it is paid, some of it is organic, but, I'd be curious to see if you see a convergence of those metrics coming together, if you see brands looking at it more holistically these days.
Yeah, I think they're looking at it. If I tie it back to my biggest conversations right now, all stem around profitability. And so I think, a lot of times people are doing item by item profitability analysis, including, not only cost of goods sold, shipping, your paid media piece. And, some of that is due to, a lot of it is, how people are converting on the detail page. And so I think that convergence is happening, but we need something to flag it first. Because for the longest time, the content side and the marketing side, right, is, hey, they're like, hey, this is what our small sampling people said, right? The pink dog works better than the blue dog. Use the blue dog. Well, okay, well, that's obviously for that set that you analyze, but maybe it needs to be the pink and the blue dog, right? There's this old Dilbert, one guy's like, hey, can you make me an engineer? Dilbert's like, yeah, I'd have to double the number of folds. And then it goes on to the next one. It's like, oh, well, maybe I'll be a marketer. And it's like, oh, that's just liquor and guessing, right? Which is kind of like 15, 20 years ago, you're like, oh, well, maybe now it's all data and analytics. And what marketers are being asked to do, because, there wasn't that many real true digital marketers. I mean, there's probably maybe 1,000 before the pandemic hit. And all of a sudden we need 5, 6, 7, 8,000, whatever it is. Like, you don't learn digital marketing overnight just because you're a marketer. And so we're asking them to completely shift everything in their mind, right? That's what happened when the pandemic hit, is nobody's in store. Nobody wants to open mail. Just do everything digital marketing. And they have to change how they look at data, how they look at content creation. And then what they want to do at the end of the day is obviously, help drive conversions. And now at this point in time, like, they have to start analyzing content piece by piece to see if they're winning or losing. And we're just not getting the tools that allow them to do that. So they've been it's funny because a lot of, people look at it, well, marketing, they've just been spending money and they don't really know their ROI, their ROAS, whatever we want to say. And that's true, but they also haven't had any tools that pull apart all the different streams, right? That's reality. You have to go by last touch attribution. I know there's halo effects, whatever. They've just been hamstrung for a long time. And now I think they're getting to those tools. So I don't know if I necessarily answered your question, but
yeah, no, I think so. I think ultimately, my point of view is, I think ultimately there's just we talk and we mentioned to marketers early, but at Profitero, we did this benchmark study It's really about the democratization of e-commerce, right? And how that
really quick, can people get that? Can people get that study?
Yes. Yeah, it's on our website under resources page. We put it out. This is, I think, the 7th year. We interviewed 400 brands, and the key message we see all the time, and the theme keeps emerging, is that e-commerce responsibility is shifting, out of that center of excellence, not going away, but being dispersed, right? And you're seeing commerce get embedded in different functions. Commerce is now being embedded in the analytics teams that traditionally measure brick and mortar. Those data sets are coming together. Commerce is now driving media with retail media. And you're seeing this sort of even in the sales and customer teams, omni-channel joint business planning, and it's sort of being dispersed around the world. And what's happening is the brands are having to go through this organizational change ramp. None of those teams really understand the fundamentals of e-commerce, because you always kept that to one team that specialized it. So as that's happening, a couple of things is you have to train and enable these teams to understand these playbooks. But you also need technology to simplify that world, because you can't just expect people to lift and shift two data sets that should work together. You need to create technical integration. So a perfect example of this is, digital shelf being a key area that drives your performance, is retail media teams don't traditionally make buying decisions or change campaigns based on the health of your product, in-stock rates, pricing. They don't know that a competitor is out of stock so that you should conquest them, because the digital team the shelf team sits on all that data. So to make that happen, you have to build technology integrations. Like we've done something like that we call Shelf Intelligent Media, which is about connecting the digital shelf to your skies and your pack views, so that those automation rules can happen when you want to conquest a competitor out of stock. So I think that the point is that it is, if you start looking at the data sets that sit in the silo of digital shelf, and you say, what kinds of actions could that power in different use cases, retail media, joint business planning, what is the playbook, and how do we automate those connections? And then the things that we can't automate that are important, how do we upskill teams to do those things until they can be automated? And I think that has to happen, or we're just going to have these silos. We're going to be making these decisions totally agnostic of what's happening, what the consumer is seeing on the digital shelf. So that's kind of where we see, getting back to our core point, convergence of media and content, convergence of media and commerce holistically, with like the digital shelf being the input, maybe driving smarter bidding.
No, that's next level. I mean, that's what it is. When you have all those data points talking, I chuckle to the old days of AMS, when you could bid on a word, for a nickel, and there's so much inventory available. Everybody could grow and bid on it, it didn't matter. And now we're at a point where, I mean, that's the next level of how people have to look at it. Like you're saying, everything talking together, not only your inventory, which a lot of people are looking at, right? If you're going out of stock, shut it off. If your competition went out of stock, ramp it up, right? If you're losing money on everything that's shipped, right, then shut it off. If you're making tons of money, ramp it up. But everything has to be talking. And then that allows you to, as those different flags pop up, why isn't it converting, right? You can start to get signals. Okay, well, the content's bad, or,
Exactly. Yeah, and I'll give credit, to this is a public case today. I'll give credit to the Kraft team, Philadelphia cream cheese. They are starting this year. They saw that they were losing market share. Very smartly, they set up an integration between Profitero's digital shelf and pack view on Walmart, and they started conquesting competitors that were going out of stock in the category, and making sure that they were showing up first ahead when the consumer is there. And, as a result of that, they were able to grow new to brand buyers. I think it was like 20% faster than they normally would. And that's where I think everybody, like the metrics of media, like moving away from ROAS to more incremental metrics, new to brand, that's pretty powerful. But I give, it's credit to brands that are thinking next level, thinking that next step, and saying, we know these things should work. Which of our tech partners can put it together for us? And that's what I would say to brands. Like, it's challenge your tech partners, know what those actions are, and challenge your tech partners to put the pieces together, make it automated. You may need to get two partners to work together to make that happen.
Yeah. So as we get to the end here, what are you most excited about over the next 12 months or so?
Yeah. So I'm really excited at Profitero about automation and what we're putting into our product suite. Some of the things that we talked about are things we're working on. The automation of prescriptive recommendations around content. Dynamically saying, "Hey, here's your content and market. This is what it should look like if optimized for the keywords." Making that really easy, allowing you to then use Gen AI to create an optimized thing, push it out to Soulsify. Really excited about automation there, and also the automation that we're putting in between the digital shelf and retail media buying with the Pacvue and Sky integrations we have. And the third area is what we talked about, some of the more basic automations that we have in place to fix what you called it. We call it the fix it button. If your content isn't correct on Amazon, we'll just fix it for you. We're not going to send you 1,000 emails and tell you that it's broken. Let's just take that off your plate. So I'm excited about where we're moving from, not just like from a world of analytics and reporting to a world of automation and actioning based on those analytics. And I think that's where I'm excited every day to wake up and see where the space is going from my 6.5 years of being a Profitero. It's reinventing itself.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It is. It's weird to think. I don't like to wish away time, but it's going to be interesting to look back. We should do this podcast a year from now. We could do more along the way, but how far things have come, because it's changing faster than ever. But again, Mike, thanks so much for your time today as we kind of wrap up here. Everybody, Mike Black from Profitero. Follow him on LinkedIn, puts out a ton of great content, just all around great friend, partner, supporter of the network. With that one, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. Thanks everybody for listening in.